Okay. Good evening, everybody. This week is Parsha Vayeitzei. Very interesting Parsha, very long Parsha, by the way. One of the longest Parshas in Chumash. And again, as a brief introduction, everything that happened to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, we spoke about it many times in Shabbos also and in the classes. Anything that happened to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov because they were the Oveis, and as the expression in Koran Oves Salun L'Shleisha, only three are the patriarchs, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Everything that happened to them is, as the Ramban writes, Ma'isa Oves Siman Labanim teaches us how to live a life. Not only does it teach us how to live a life, it gives us the strength and the koyach and the ability to be able to live the life that they lived. And we can lead such a life based on the power that they gave. So everything that's going on in the Parsha basically deals with a lesson for everybody. Now, the end of last week's Parsha, Yaakov took away the brachas from Esav. Esav wanted to kill him. Rivka found out about it. She says, okay. She says to Yaakov, you have to go find a shidduch. It's time to get married. You have to go find a shidduch to my brother's Lavan's house. She comes to Yitzchak. She says, send him away. He has to find the shidduch, and he can't find the shidduch here. So the pasuk opens up with the famous pasuk, Vayeitzei Yaakov me Be'er Sheva. Yaakov Avinu left Be'er Sheva, which was the place seemingly where Yitzchak lived. Vayelech Harana, and he went to Haran. And then the pasuk continues. I'm just going to read one more pasuk, and then because it's relevant to the whole explanation of what's going on here. Vayivka b'mokem, he came to the place. Vayalan sham, he slept there. Kivar shemesh, because the sun set early, as the Medrash says. Vayikach me'avnei hamokem, he took from the stones of the place. Vayasim et he put it around his head, and he went to sleep there. Rashi says, why did he put it around his head? Because he was afraid of the animals. The animals can come and at the middle of the night in the desert, wherever it was, the animals could be dangerous to him. So he put him to protect his head. So the obvious question is, and not only that, after the dream, and Hashem promises him everything, so it says at the end, Vayikach even, he took the stone that he put around his head, and he made it into a monument. So Rashi explains what happened over here. First he took the stones, plural, and then it became one stone. So Rashi says that all the stones started fighting between each other, whatever that means, that each stone wanted Yaakov Avinu to lay his head on top of him, not on the other stone. So Hashem made peace amongst all the stones. He took all the stones and Hashem made it into one. That is the simple story, the way it is when you learn the Chumash and the Rashi. That's what the simple story is. Obviously, there is much, much, much more to the story than what we just said. Much deeper than that. So the way Chassidus explains this whole story is actually relative and important in relating to every single Jew. Before neshama comes into the world, the Gemara says in Nida, and Alter Rebbe opens Tanya with this, that before neshama comes into the world, mashbiyan eisei tehi tzadik val tirasha. We give the neshama a vow, an oath, that he should be a tzaddik and not be a rasha. And the question is, what is the purpose of this oath? The neshama wants to be good. The problem is the body gets in the way. So what is it going to help giving the neshama an oath if the body is going to get in the way anyway? So Chassidus explains, Alter Rebbe alludes to it in Tanya, and some Chassidic explains it more in his explanation of Tanya, that mashbiyan doesn't only mean give a vow. Mashbiyan comes from the word masbi'in, which means we fill it up. V'chalta v'savata. We fill it up, we satisfy it. In other words, before neshama comes into the world, the Gemara says, mashbiyan eisei, we give the neshama the strength and the ability that tihi tzaddik, you should be a tzaddik. even in the body, the neshama is given a power before the neshama comes into the body that it could be a tzaddik and not a rashi. So Chassidus explains over here as follows. Vayeitzei Yaakov meBeersheva refers to the neshama coming down into the body. Yaakov refers to the neshama, the Jew. Vayeitzei Yaakov meBeersheva. What does Beersheva mean? Sheva must be an Eisei. The neshama comes from Gan Eden. The neshama comes from a place where they give him the ability that he could be a tzaddik and not a rasha. And where does he go? Where's this neshama going to? Vayelech Harana, he goes to the city of Haran. What does Haran represent? The Medrash says, Haran comes from the word Charain Af, anger. Charain Af Shel Mokeh, meaning a place where God gets angry, meaning a place of evil. So this pasuk actually refers to the neshama of every one of us coming down from Beersheva, from Gan Eden, which is the place where the neshama is given that ability to be a tzaddik. And where does it go? Vayelech Haran. It comes into a place in the body, Yetzer Hara, Nefesh Habamis, a place where gets God angry, meaning a place of evil. Now, what's the role of the Jew? So the pasuk says, "Vayikach me'avnei hamokim." You have to take from the stones of the place. What does it mean, stones of the place? Hamokim refers to Hashem. Baruch Hamokim, Baruch Hu. Hamokim Menachem, we say when God bids somebody sitting shiva. Hamokim refers to God. What does it mean, Avnei Hamokim? So this morning we learned in Chassidus, in Alter Rebbe's Torah on. Alter Rebbe explains, there's in Sefer Yetzirah, which is the book of creation, by the way, it says 8 letters are likened to stones. And he says, he gives in the Sefer Yetzirah says like this: 2 stones build 2 houses. 3 stones build 6 houses. What does this mean? If you have 2 letters, Aleph Beis, so you can make 2 words, Aleph Beis and Beis Aleph. You can't make more than 2 words, Aleph Beis and Beis Aleph. If you have 3 stones, 3 letters, then you can make 6 words. You can make whatever, Aleph, the different variations of the letters. I want to get it. And if you have 4 letters, you can even make much more. So letters are called avonim. Avnei hamokim means the stones of the place refers to the letters, meaning the words that Hashem created the world with. Hashem created the world with speech, Vayomer Elokim, with letters, with words. And that is called Avnei hamokim. What did Yaakov Avinu do? What is the role of a Jew? Vayikach me'avnei hamokim. He takes pluralism, the various creations, which are plural creations, avonim plural, meaning a lot of creations that God created, that seemingly pluralism contradicts Hashem Echad, the oneness of one God. If there's one God, especially when we say Yachid, Yachid means there's only Hashem, there's nothing else. So what does it mean when we say, Vayikach me'avnei hamokim, he took from the stones of the place, meaning he took diversity of multiple creations that Hashem created, and at the end, after the dream, it became one stone. Meaning, what is the role of the Jew? That in a city of Haran, in a place of evil, which by the way means automatically that there's diversity, there's no bittul, there's no subjugation to one God, so there's diversity, there's evil In Kedusha is only one, only Hashem. Einoid Milvadi, there's only God. Evil is diverse. So therefore, what is the role of the Jew? To take Avnei Hamokim, pluralism of the world, diversity of the world, and make it into Even Echad, make it into one stone. What does Even Echad mean? Make the place godly. In other words, what is the role of a Jew in this world? To take world and show that world not only doesn't contradict Hashem, is not only a contradiction to the oneness of Hashem, but on the contrary, the greatness is that the world actually shows that Hashem Echad. And this will be ultimately when Mashiach comes. And this explains, by the way, why Yaakov Avinu put the stones only around his head. There's a famous sikh of the Rebbe asks, if it was to protect him from the animals, so putting around the head is not enough. The animal can rip apart your heart, God forbid, chas v'sholem, or he can kill you another way. What is this uniqueness of putting it around the head? And the Rebbe explains, because we know, the pasuk says, it's quoted in Pirkei Avos, Yegia kapecha piseichel. Simply it means when you work with the effort of your hands, ashrecha v'toiv lach. You're fortunate and it's good for you. And the Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, it's fortunate for you in this world and it's good for you in the world to come. So the Rebbe explains what is the emphasis over here. Yegia kapecha v'lo roshecha. You have to work in business with your hands. Your head needs to be somewhere else, not in the business. That doesn't mean, to clarify, it doesn't mean you can't run a business if you don't use your head. Okay, obviously a business has to use your head to run a business. Any business, you need to use your head. What the Rebbe explains, what it means is the goal of your business should not be in the business. There's a famous story with the Tzemach Tzedek. A guy was he sold kaloshin. Kaloshin are boots, rubbers, galoshes, boots. And the person was very heavily involved in his business. And the Tzemach Tzedek once said to him, he gave him the Yechidus to the Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek was admonishing him in a nice way. And the Tzemach Tzedek said to him, you know something? I've always seen feet in the boot. A head in the boot that I've never seen. And your whole head is in the boot. Meaning, your whole goal in life is that business of the boots. Yaakov Avinu is teaching us when a neshama comes down into the world, the neshama is coming from Be'er Sheva, and he's coming into Charan, meaning the neshama is now coming into the body. And the role of the Jew is to take the stones, the diversity, pluralism of evil of the world, and utilize it all for the sake of Kedusha. But how do you do that? By realizing that you only your hands are in the business. What you really need, your head should be in the purpose of it all, to be able to serve Hashem. And there was a very big chassid of the Alter Rebbe. His name was Binyamin Kletzke. His name was Binyamin, and he dealt in wood. And in Yiddish, wood is called klotz. So he was called Binyamin Kletzke. He's a wealthy chassid. At one time, there was pre-computers and iPhones and all that, even before calculators. He was once sitting, making a cheshbon of his business. And then, he was adding up the figures, and he drew a line. And subconscious, nobody was watching him. It wasn't a fake. He wrote Sachak, sum total, the line, and he wrote Einaid Mulvadi, only God exists. What was the outcome of his business? The outcome of his business was Einaid Mulvadi, only God exists. And this is the lesson of Vayikach mi'avnei hamokim ve'yosim merashesim. That is the purpose of the neshamas coming down into the world, that we should realize the focus has to be in the purpose. And only the physical part of us is actually what goes into the world and goes into the business. Another thing is when Yaakov Avinu had his dream, so it says, Hine Malachi Elokim Olim v'Yordim Bay. He saw, what did he see in his dream? He saw a ladder from the earth to the heaven, and he saw angels Olim v'Yordim going up and coming down. So Rashi asks the question, normally angels are in heaven, so they should be coming down first and then going back up. Why does the pasuk say Olim v'Yordim first going up and then coming down? So Rashi answers that the angels that accompanied Yaakov from Eretz Yisrael, now he was coming to Chutz La'aretz. So the angels that were with him in Eretz Yisrael, they left. And the malachim of Golus, of Chutz La'aretz, they came down. So first Olim and then Yordim. They tell a story, the Heilige Ruzhiner, the head of the Ruzhiner dynasty of Yisrael Ruzhiner, was a very brilliant person, very close to the Tzemach Tzedek. They're very, very close. There's a lot of stories of Tzemach Tzedek and the Ruzhiner. But when the Ruzhiner was a little boy learning Chumash with his Rebbe, anytime when they learned the pasuk, any question Rashi had, he already asked before he even learned the Rashi. That's how smart he was. His Rebbe taught him a pasuk in Chumash. He already asked Rashi's question without even learning Rashi. He came to this pasuk, the angels going up and going down, and he didn't ask any questions. So his Rebbe said to him, his name was Yisrael, they call him Srolik. His name was Yisrael. His Rebbe said to him, Srolik, such an obvious question Rashi asks, how is it possible the angels first go up and come down? Why didn't you ask me that question? And he smiled at his Rebbe. He was a 5-year-old kid. He said, Rebbe, this is a dream. On a dream, you don't ask any questions. And there's another interesting story with the Rebbe. The pasuk says, Hashem said to him, the beginning of the Parsha, it says, what did Hashem tell Yaakov in the dream? The land that you're laying on, I'm going to give to your children. So Rashi says, when Yaakov in the dream, Hashem took the whole Eretz Yisrael and put it under Yaakov's body. And therefore Hashem said to him, the land that you're laying on, I'm going to give to your children. So the whole Eretz Yisrael he gave to the Yidden. So a little girl asked the Rebbe a question. If Hashem took the whole Eretz Yisrael and put it under Yaakov Avinu, so where was Yitzchak? Where was Yitzchak? He took the whole Eretz Yisrael and put it under Yaakov, so where was Yitzchak? And the Rebbe answered her, my dear friend, this is a dream. It wasn't in the dream he saw that Eretz Yisrael was all under him. It was a dream. It wasn't the reality that Yitzchak was underneath Yaakov when he slept. It was a dream, and a dream is a dream. But Chassidus explains this story, this ladder, much different. When we were learning Tefillah, we talked about it. We know the Chazal tell us that when Yaakov Avinu came to this place, Vayivka B'mokim, the Gemara says, Vayivka means davening. He davened. Yaakov instituted Arvis, Maidiv. Yaakov made the Tefillah of Maidiv because he davened by the dream when it was night. To Yaakov Avinu, Avram made Shachris, Yitzchak made the Mincha, Yaakov made Arvis. So the Sulam, by the way, Valatur says Sulam is a numerical value of Sinai. Samach Lamed Mem. Samach Lamed Mem equals Sinai, the Balaturim says. But the Chassidus, it's explained that the Sulam that goes from the earth, Mutzav Arza, the Reish Magia Shemaim, and the top of the ladder hit the sky, refers to the concept of prayer, Tefillah. What does Tefillah do? Tefillah, we learned, means binding and connection. In fact, in this week's Parsha, Naphtali is born. What does Rashi say? Well, one of the reasons he was called Naphtali, because my husband will now connect to me. There's an expression in Chassidic, Hatefel Kli Cheres, means if somebody glues an earthenware vessel. Teifel Naphtali Tefillah means binding and connection. What does davening do? What is it binding? It binds the Jew and Hashem. Okay? Now, there's two ways of binding the Jew and Hashem. The Jew go up the ladder, or Hashem come down the ladder. And this, by the way, in a general way, is the difference between davening and learning. Learning is the coming down your din, because what is learning? You take Hashem's Torah, Hashem's wisdom, and you bring it down into your head. That's godliness coming into my head. What is the concept of tefillah like sacrifices? You burn the carbon and it goes up to Hashem. What is davening? Refinement. Davening is us going up. So you want to take the sulam, even the way Chassidus learns, Balaturim learns, it's tefillah and Torah, it's olim v'yardim. It goes up and it comes down. Going up is davening, and coming down is the concept of learning. And first you have olim, because first you have to daven, and then you're allowed to learn. Gemara says you're not allowed to learn before davening, unless if it's a class, whatever, different exceptions to the rule. Why do you have to daven first? Because by davening you realize that there's a God existing, and this God, it's Torah, and therefore Torah we don't understand, and Torah is beyond our understanding, and whatever we understand, we're lucky. And therefore, if I don't understand something in Torah, it's not that Torah doesn't make sense. I just don't get it, because my brain is limited. So the whole sulam of Yaakov Avinu's dream is actually represent, and therefore, where was the sulam? Rashi says in the place of the Beis Hamikdash. What is the Beis Hamikdash? Karbanis and davening, which is instead of karbanis. Beis Hamikdash, yeah, the Bezdin sat there also. The big Bezdin of 71 also sat in the Beis Hamikdash. So there was Torah and Tefillah in the Beis Hamikdash. But this is Yaakov Avinu's ladder. The ladder is going up and coming down. How do we daven? Davening starts in a low place, and then it moves up. Up to Baruch Shamar, between Baruch Sham and Yishtabach, between Yishtabach and Shemon Esrei, and then you go up to the climax, the Amidah, the Shemon Esrei. That's the Jew elevating himself for the concept of prayer in the four levels of the four worlds. Up to Baruch Shama is Asiya, Baruch Shama to Yishtabach is Yitzira, Krishma and the brachas of Krishma is Bria, and Atzilis, which is the world of nullification, the world of Bittul. So we stand with our feet together, no movements, because that's what Shemon Esrei is. Then you have a level of Tachnum, which is even higher. Then the ladder of Tefillah starts coming down. Ashri Volitzian, the Yom, Ein Kolokenu, and Aleinu. Davening coming down. We go up, we elevate ourselves, but it's not enough to stay up there in heaven. We have to bring it back down to earth. So Yaakov Avinu's Sulam is actually representing the whole concept of Tefillah and Torah. And again, this is the whole purpose of Vayeitzei Yaakov Miber Shava Vayelech Harana. What's the purpose of an neshama coming into the world? To learn and to daven and to do mitzvahs. And that is by taking physical objects that on their own are not holy, diversity, klipa, evil, and we make it holy. What do you mean you make it holy? You make it godly. What does godly mean? Complete level of bittul, complete level of kedusha, oneness of God. Take from the stones and you make it into one. That's the role of the Jew. Okay, another interesting thing in the Parsha that a lot of commentaries talk. I'm just going to jump around because I want to cover different parts of the Parsha. There's a famous question in the Parsha. We know that Yaakov Avinu married Rachel, and then he married Leah first, and then he married Rachel. He wanted to marry Rachel first. All the commentaries, a lot of commentaries, ask a halachic question. We know that Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov kept the Torah, according to most opinions. They kept Torah. There's a din in Torah, a clear, open din. You're not allowed to marry two sisters as long as either one of them are alive. In other words, if somebody is married to, let's say, Leah, and Leah and Rachel are sisters, even if he divorces Leah, he's not allowed to marry Rachel as long as Leah is alive. The Torah says, B'chayeha, when she's alive. If, God forbid, Leah passes away, then the brother can marry Rachel. The husband can marry the wife's sister if she's not alive anymore. As long as she's alive, even if they divorce, you're not allowed to marry your wife's sister. Now the question is, Yaakov Avinu married Leah. How was he allowed to marry Rachel? He wasn't allowed to. If he kept Torah, he wasn't allowed to. And then there's even another question the Rebbe asks in a Sikha. According to many opinions, Bilhah and Zilpah were also sisters. So not only did Yaakov Avinu marry two sisters, he married four sisters. The question is, how was he allowed to do it? How can you marry two sisters? Let's leave Rachel and Leah. We'll have enough to deal with Rachel and Leah. How is he allowed to marry two sisters? So the Ramban answers, and this is the Ramban's opinion, contrary to Rashi. The Ramban says, and it says very interestingly, by the way, the Ramban says the Ravs only kept Torah in Eretz Yisrael. Outside of Eretz Yisrael, they did not keep Torah. Where did Yaakov marry Rachel and Leah? In Haran. Haran wasn't Eretz Yisrael. It was Chutz La'aretz, Golus. So Yaakov, when he married Rachel and Leah, he was allowed to marry them because he didn't keep Torah in outside of Eretz Yisrael. And the Ramban says, therefore, this explains another thing. When Yaakov was coming home, when he came into Eretz Yisrael, what happened? Rachel died. Why did Rachel die as soon as he came back to Eretz Yisrael? The Ramban says, because he wasn't allowed to marry two sisters. Who did he marry first? Leah. He still married Leah first. So he wasn't allowed to marry Rachel. So outside of Eretz Yisrael, where he didn't keep the Torah, the Ramban says, okay, so he had two wives. Once he came back to Eretz Yisrael, so now he's keeping the whole Torah. So he can't be married to two sisters. So Rachel died. Zilpah and Bilhah, the Rebbe explains in the Sikha, they had a din of slave. First, they were half sisters, not whole sisters. Plus, they had a din of a slave. Mater, and said he loses their personal identity. So therefore, Bilhah and Zilpah, basically, they weren't sisters halachically. Okay, because they were slaves, and therefore they lost their identity. But another answer is, how is Yaakov able to marry two sisters when Torah says you're not allowed to? So some commentators say Rishonim right because Hashem told him to. Period. Hashem told him to. So even though it's against Torah, but Hashem told him to do it. The same God that said keep Torah said marry two sisters. This is what the Parsha answered. These are the two general answers. But the Rebbe asks, what is Rashi hold? And why doesn't the child, Rashi learns Chumash and answers all questions in the simple meaning of the passage. Why doesn't Rashi even explain how is Yaakov allowed to marry Rachel and Leah? Rashi doesn't answer it. And Rashi does not hold like the Ramban. Ramban says Yaakov Avinu only kept Torah in Eretz Yisrael, right? But Rashi says clearly, next parsha, Vayishlach im Lavan Garti. Rashi says Garti is Taryag, Rashi says, in Pshat, in the simple meaning, that Yaakov Avinu said to Esav, "Im Lavan Gaiti, even by Lavan I kept all 613 mitzvahs." So then the obvious question is, Rashi says clearly Yaakov kept Torah even by Lavan's house. So now the question is, how was he allowed to marry two sisters? And the Rebbe explains an answer, but the answer is a very, very important lesson for everybody. The Rebbe explains like this, according to Rashi, the way Rashi would learn it. And this is as follows. This that Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov kept Torah before it was given, they didn't have to. It wasn't they were obligated to keep Torah mitzvahs. It was a chumrah. They were strict. They did more than the law demands. Torah wasn't given yet. Halachically, they didn't have to keep it. They wanted to be machmed. They wanted to be strict. And therefore, they wanted to keep Torah even before it wasn't given. The Rebbe says, therefore, it's self-understood that if this strictness would get in the way of something that they had to keep, that was mandatory for them to keep, they wouldn't be allowed to do the strictness. Because what comes first? What you have to do or above the law? First, you have to do what you have to do. If that doesn't contradict above the law, then you could do both. You could be machmed. Torah says they don't have to keep kosher, but they kept kosher. Okay, that doesn't contradict it. If something contradicts something that you have to do, then they can't keep Tita, because Tita itself would say don't keep it in this particular case, because this you have to and this you don't have to. And the Rebbe explains, I'll explain how it works by Yaakov and Rachel in a second. The Rebbe explains, that also explains in simple pshat, why Avram Avinu didn't do a bris before he was commanded to. If Avram Avinu kept the whole Torah before it was given, why didn't he give himself a bris? And the answer is because he wasn't allowed to. In the pasuk, one of the Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach is murder. Part of murder is damaging yourself, causing yourself to be endangering yourself, to make yourself bleed. Avram Avinu couldn't do a bris before he was commanded to do it. Because what would Avram Avinu do by doing a bris? He would injure himself. Injuring himself was forbidden for anybody to do, Jew or non-Jew. It was halachically forbidden to endanger yourself by hurting yourself. And therefore, Avram Avinu wasn't allowed to do a bris, because Tita would say you can't do the bris, because Tita says you're not allowed to hurt yourself. You want to be observant, super observant, and do a bris, not at the expense of doing what you need to do. And the Rebbe says this is what happened with Yaakov and Rachel and Leah. Yaakov promised Rachel he's going to marry her. Right? He promised her, I'm going to marry you. What happened? Lavan messed it up. And he gave Leah instead. Okay? Now he's married to Leah. By hook or by crook. He's married to Leah. Now he has a dilemma. I promised Rachel I'm going to be marrying her. But if I keep Torah, I'm not going to be allowed to marry her. So what do I do? What do I do? I promised her, a promise you have to keep. That's not observance, strict observance. That's decency. Menschlich decency is you promise somebody, you have to keep it. Like it says in Torah, what comes out of you, when you make a promise, you have an obligation to keep it. Now the problem is, if he keeps his promise, he's going to transgress Torah. But if he doesn't transgress Torah, he's going to transgress his promise. Halachically, what comes first? So the Rebbe explains, halachically, according to Torah, that Yaakov was keeping because he wanted to be Mahmid, he had to marry Rachel because he promised he was going to marry her. And therefore, Yaakov was allowed to marry Rachel. Not only was he allowed to marry Rachel, he had to marry Rachel based on Torah, because Torah itself says, if there's something that you must do versus something that you don't have to do, Halachically, you have to do what you have to do. What's the lesson in a practical sense? It's a very important lesson. Many times people are strict. They do chumrah. They want to be strict. But sometimes that strictness comes at the expense of being a mensch, of doing what you're supposed to do. Sometimes you want to be machmir. It will come at the expense of kibbud avreim, of not honoring your parents. Sometimes you want to be machmir. It will come into making a fight of shalom bayis. Yaakov Avinu, in this week, this is what the Rebbe explains. Yaakov Avinu, in this week, Parsha teaches us a very important lesson in life. Something you have to do comes before what you want to be stricter about. Can you imagine? Yaakov Avinu transgressed Tita by marrying Rachel. Why? Because he promised her he's going to marry her. And that comes before keeping Tita, which was only, you didn't have to keep Tita. Today, by the way, if you promise your wife's sister you're going to marry her, it's still not going to help because Torah says you're not allowed to. And if you do, by the way, and they have kids, the kids are mamzedim. The kids are mamzed. Because Torah says you're not allowed to. Yaakov Avinu didn't have that issue because he was allowed to do it. But he was strict, not at the expense of doing what he was supposed to do. And the lesson is very interesting. Things you have to do come before the strictness of what you want to be. And you see this very clear. I'll give you a simple example when it comes to Pesach. A lot of people, and a lot of rabbis talk about this, by the way. A lot of times people have fanatic strictnesses and observances when it comes to Pesach. Yeah? But sometimes they're invited to a family, in-laws, outlaws, somebody that, you have to go for Shalom Bayis, you have to go. But they are not as strict as you are. So now the question is like this. What comes first? Shalom Bayis or strictness of Pesach? So you have a lot of fanatics that say, no, fanaticism comes first. That's it. Fanaticism comes first. It doesn't matter who, what, when, where, family, no family, Shalom Bayis, not Shalom Bayis, fanaticism. Yaakov Avinu teaches us no. Fanaticism does not come before doing what you need to do. And there's you have this in many aspects in life, going to people's whatever. But again, you have to need halacha guidance to know when yes and when no. Another interesting thing in the parsha, when finally Rachel had Yosef, she said, "Why did he call him Yosef?" And she said, "Yosef Hashem li bein acher." Hashem should add. She knew, like Rashi says, they were all prophets, the mothers, the Imois, and they knew that they're going to have only 12 kids. Okay, and 11 kids were already born. So Rachel davened that the 12th kid should be Yosef Hashem li bein acher, that I should have the 12th kid. And what she did, Hashem answered her prayer, and she gave birth to Binyamin. Now, the Chassidic says, what is it? He defines the pasuk a little bit deeper. Yosef Hashem li bein acher. Simply it means Hashem should add to me another son. So Chassidic says, no. Yosef Hashem li, Hashem should give me the strength and give me the ability to make a ben out of an acher, a child out of a stranger. Again, the same concept. What does Hashem want from us to do? To take the world acher, otherwise, other things, not godliness, like the expression Elokim acherim, other things. And Rachel's tefillah was, and this is the Aveda of Yosef Hashem li bein acher. That out of an acher, Hashem should give me the strength to be able to make a ben, a child, out of an acher, out of a foreigner. Meaning the foreigner should also be close to Hashem and one with Hashem himself. And another point in this whole scenario that we're just speaking about is, where did Yaakov build all the 11 Shvatim? Binyamin was born in Eretz Yisrael on the way back. Where did Yaakov Avinu build Klal Yisrael, the 12 tribes? Where did he build them? Not in Eretz Yisrael. Dafka in Lavan's house. The swindler, the thief, the liar, the Rasha. Where did Yaakov Avinu do it? By taking the pluralism of Lavan's house, the evil of Lavan's house, and he transformed it into Klal Yisrael. Only Binyamin was born in Eretz Yisrael. The rest of the tribes, Chutz La'aretz. Which shows again, the mission of the Jew is primarily when you are in the body, when you're in Chutz La'aretz, so to speak, out of it. That's when you have this ability to do what you need to do. Another interesting thing at the end of the Parsha, there's a few more things I want to talk about, but let's see, I want to do this before, and then if you have time, we'll talk more. After Yaakov Avinu ran away from Lavan's house, Lavan chased him. Okay? So what did they do? So Lavan came and said, oh, you're stealing my kids? What's going on? My wife, my daughters, my kids, what are you doing over here? So they made a monument. Yeah? And it says they took stones and they made a gal. A gal is a heap of stones. Okay? And what did they say? And they say, Lavan said, Al kain agal hazeh, this thing, okay, is the heap of separation between you and me. And Yaakov Avinu says, Ani lo ever elecha sagal hazeh, I will not go to your side, you will not come to my side, meaning we will live peacefully by side. That's what Yaakov Avinu says in this Gal story. Eda Gal Hazeh. It says in Kabbalah, and based in the Zohar, one of the great days in the Kabbalistic days is Lag BaOmer. Okay? Lag BaOmer is the day Rashbi passed away, Rav Shimon Yochai passed away, and that's the day that's called Matan Tita of Pnimius HaTeira, the day, the secrets of Tita, Matan Tita. Matan Tita of the revealed Tita was given on Shavuos. Matan Tita, Pnimius HaTeira, was given on Lag BaOmer. So it says, where do we find in Tita that the word Lag BaOmer is alluded to? So there's two places. One is a pasuk in Tilim, Gal Einai, David HaMelech says, Hashem, Gal Einai, open up my eyes, V'abiten neflois b'teirasecha, I should see the wonders of your Torah. That's one pasuk. Gal is Lag. The second pasuk Chassidus gives is Eda Gal Hazeh, of this Gal between Lavan and Yaakov. Okay, now, a barrier basically is there to separate. But there's a difference between a wall and a gal. A gal is just a heap of stones. It's not cemented together. It's not permanent. It's temporary. When you make a gal, when you make a heap of stones, a heap of rocks, the purpose is that it shouldn't last forever, that it should eventually fall apart. What happens when it falls apart? The barrier between the two is non-existent anymore. What happened in Matan Tita, and we discussed this a while ago on Lag BaOmer, I wanted to get through it briefly because this is the source of it in the Parsha. When Hashem gave the Torah in Har Sinai, the Medrash says there was a decree before Matan Tita. The guys on top of the mountain cannot go to the bottom of the mountain. The guys on the bottom of the mountain cannot go up to the top of the mountain. In simple English, spiritual is spiritual and physical is physical. Before Matan Tita, in fact, I'll give you an example. Today, in this week's Parsha, Yaakov Avinu is playing with colored sticks. Laban's the sheep with the colored sticks, and they all gave birth to colored animals. It says in Kabbalah that Yaakov Avinu's playing with the colored sticks was like putting on tefillin. How did Yaakov Avinu accomplish what we accomplish by tefillin? Is Yaakov Avinu played with the colored sticks? That's how he put on tefillin. Why? Because before Matan Torah, Yaakov Avinu couldn't make a pair of tefillin holy. Because before Matan Torah, the only reason why Avram Avinu, his bris, became holy because Hashem commanded him to do it, and therefore it's like Matan Torah, because Hashem commanded him to do it. Otherwise, before Matan Torah, there was a decree, Ruchnius is Ruchnius, Gashmius is Gashmius. Hashemayim Shemayim Hashem, the heavens belong to God, meaning spirituality belongs to God. And Ha'aretz Nasan Levnei Adam, and the earth was given to people, physical is physical. What happened at that time, Matan Torah? Hashem took off the barrier. He says, no more barrier. Hashem came down, Moshe Rabbeinu went up. Basically, what happened in Matan Torah? Physical and spiritual were mixed. Until Rashbi, until Rav Shimon bar Yochai, secrets of Torah were secrets of Torah, and the revealed Torah was the revealed Torah. They were not allowed to mix. They were not infused, hidden and revealed. They were two separate entities. Secrets of Torah were selected for select people, and the revealed Torah was for everybody. What did Rav Shimon bar Yochai accomplish? Rav Shimon bar Yochai accomplished, just like Matan Torah accomplished spiritual and physical can merge. Rav Shimon bar Yochai on Lag BaOmer, when he passed away, Gal, Eida Gal Hazeh and Gal Einai, what did Rav Shimon bar Yochai accomplish? That the secrets of Torah and the revealed Torah are all one. And what is it connected to? Because Tes Kislev, tomorrow, not the next day, Wednesday, is Tes Kislev, the birthday and the yahrzeit of Mittler Rebbe. Yud Kislev, the Mittler Rebbe was released in present. Yud Tes Kislev, the Alter Rebbe was released Rosh Hashanah for Chassidus. Why is it in these weeks? Because what the Alter Rebbe accomplished, what the Baal Shem Tov accomplished is that Chassidus has to be disseminated, like the Baal Shem Tov was told by Mashiach, when the well springs of Torah will be disseminated to the most external places, to the most outer places, meaning that even the Pnimius of Torah, the secrets of Torah, are now open to the masses. And that's the level of Gal. Originally, there was a Gal, there was a heap, Yaakov, you're here, Lavan, you're here. Secrets of Tita are here, revealed Tita is here. What happened with Yaakov Avinu making this Gal, Lag BaOmer? Yaakov Avinu accomplished, and this is where it's alluded to in Tita, the concept of Lag BaOmer. And that's why Vayeitzei is usually the Mittler Rebbe's birthday and the day he was freed from prison, and so on and so forth. What is it? The day that the barriers between secrets of Torah and revealed of Torah become one. Like the Rebbe always would say, just like in a person, there's a body and a soul. The body is spiritual, the soul is spiritual, the body is physical. But when the soul and the body become one, when Vayela Charanu, when the neshama leaves Be'er Sheva and comes into Charan, the soul and the body are one. You can't cut them in half, soul and body. It's one entity. The Rebbe says Torah also has a body and a soul. What's a body? A body is the part of the person you see. The soul is secretive. You don't see the soul. You see the function of the soul, but you don't see the soul. What is Chassidus? Is the neshama of Torah. Niglo, the revealed, that's called the body of Torah. There's a body and soul of Torah too. Just like in a person, there's a body and soul. In Tita, there's a body and soul. Because Hashem created the world with Tita. So what is this body and soul? Revealed Tita and hidden Tita. What happens when the body and the soul get together? It's one Tita. And therefore, the Rebbe explains, anything you will find in Chassidus, you will find in the revealed part of Tita. Anything you find in the revealed part of Tita, you will find in Chassidus, because it's two halves of one whole. And that's the same concept. When Hashem created earth, half the earth is water, half the earth is dry land. What's the difference? And the Gemara says, Kol ma sheyesh bayabasha yesh bayam. Whatever there is in dry land exists in the ocean. Ocean is more than half the world is ocean. Can you imagine? What's the difference, though, between dry land and ocean? When you look at the dry land, things are revealed. You see them. When things are in the ocean, all you see is water. Kamayim layom machasim. All you see is water. You don't see anything. What does that refer to? Yabasha land, that refers to the revealed part of Tita. Everything is Yabasha, seeing. What does Yam refer to? The secrets of Tita that you don't see. But the Yam and Yabasha become one. That's what happened in Kriyas Yamsuf. That's what happens when Mashiach will come. There is the unity between the secrets of Tita and the revealed parts of Tita. And that's what Eida Galazer refers to, the unity between all. Okay, just one more thing, and we'll just start it at least. We know the Avos are only three. We say Avram Avinu, Yitzchak Avinu, Yaakov Avinu. We don't say Reuven Avinu, Shimon Avinu, Levi Avinu, Yehuda Avinu. Why? Because we all come from Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. But not all of us come from Reuven. Not all of us come from Shimon, not all of us come from Levi, not all of us come from Yehuda. Okay, if you're a Kohen or a Levi, you come from Shevet Levi. You don't come from Reuven or Shimon. Nevertheless, because they're the 12 Shvatim, each of the Shvatim, and I'm only going to start because it's late, each one of the Shvatim brings out another way of serving Hashem. For instance, Reuven is called Reuven. What does Reuven mean? As Leah herself said, why did she call him Reuven? Ra'ah Hashem. Hashem saw. When Reuven was born, he said, Ra'ah Hashem ba'ani. Hashem saw my affliction. Therefore, she called him Reuven. Why was he called, the next one called Shimon? She said, Shama Hashem. Shama Hashem. God heard me. What is Levi, the third son? Hapam Yilava Ishi Eli. My husband will accompany me, connect to me. What is Yehuda? Hoda'ah. Submission. Bittul. Okay? Let's just start and we'll see how far we get. In serving Hashem, there's different ways of serving Hashem. You have a way of seeing Hashem, hearing Hashem, connecting to Hashem, and submission to Hashem. And each Jew needs really all of them. What's the difference between seeing and listening? Listening, by the way, doesn't only mean hearing, it means understanding. Shema Yisrael doesn't mean hear, it means understand that Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Shema, Chassidus says, Shema does not only mean hearing, it means understanding. What's the difference between seeing and listening? In English, there's an expression, seeing is believing. When you see something, you believe it. What does that mean? If I see something, if I see this cup, I see it. And you will bring me a million proofs that it didn't exist and I couldn't have seen it, I will not listen to you. I won't believe it because I see it. You can never negate that idea. Understanding If I understand something, you can show to me, you can prove me that I don't understand it. You can prove to me that I don't understand it. I might think I understand, but you prove to me I don't understand it. You can never do that with seeing. Seeing is believing. And therefore, there's a halacha. A judge who saw a murder case cannot be a judge in that case. The question is, what's better than that? He has to hear it from witnesses? This is better than he saw it himself. Why can't he? He's not ein eid nasa dayan. A witness cannot become a judge. Why? So the halacha is very simple. Why? Because once you see something, you're not impartial anymore. You can't be parv. When I hear something, I understand something, I hear it from the witnesses, I can still be impartial. Maybe they're not saying the truth. Maybe they are saying the truth. I can be impartial. The din is a judge must be impartial to be able to make a proper judgment. Once a judge sees the murder case, he cannot be impartial. And the Torah says in the laws of judgment, V'shaftu ha'eda, they have to judge, v'hitzilu, and they have to be able to find merit. They have to find merit. A judge that saw a murder case will never be able to find merit. What does Ru'uvei mean? It's late, but very briefly. Ru'uvei means I believe in it. I see God. I understand Torah mitzvahs as if I see it. But sometimes you need nishma also. You need to understand it. Because just believing is not enough for a Jew. A Jew has to also nasa v'nishma. We need to understand it. Why do we need to understand it? Why isn't believing enough? Because Hashem says, I gave you a brain. The highest faculty of a human being is the brain. Hashem says, you know what? You need to work on that brain and make that holy. If you believe, your brain's not getting affected by it. Your brain's not going to become holy. The highest faculty of the person will not become holy. Hashem says, yes, you need Reuven, but at the same time, you need Shimon. It's late, and you can go on with Levi and Yehuda. Anyway, Mitzvah Shem, Wednesday night will be a class. Thursday, I know it's Thanksgiving, but it's Yud Kislev, so there's no Tachnun. And Wednesday Mincha and Thursday day. But in Mitzvah Shem, the class will be Wednesday night in Halacha and Tanya. So until then, everybody have a great week.
Amen. You
Thank
too.
you, Rabbi.
Happy
Thank
birthday.
you.
Happy birthday.
Thank
Happy
you.
birthday. Happy
Thank
Shusterman.
you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Take care,
Happy
everybody.
birthday.
Bye, Gazoo.
Happy
Happy
birthday.
birthday.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Bye, guys.
Tonight is Rabbi's birthday.
Mazel tov.